Yeah.
I want to just take a step back and look at a term, because we talked about this when we talked on the phone previous conversation. I just had my third child, and this was the first time I've heard of this term, and so I'm not even going to be able to say it because I'm like, wait, what is this word? Hey, could you tell me what is this word? Because it's paternal prenatal depression. Is that
post-perinatal?
Post-perinatal.
Yeah,
so that is for
paternal perinatal depression or post-perinatal depression. Yes.
And so that's for the dads, and it's something that dads may experience.
Welcome to our podcast. The better you are, the better you are. Whether it is physically, mentally, or spiritually, when you know better, you can do better. And when you do better, you'll be better. On this podcast, we share knowledge, expertise, opinions, and experiences. All things that can help you to change the game. By the time we're done, it's hard for you not to be encouraged. So join us.
What I like to do is make sure that the prescribing medical provider is also fully aware of the pregnancy, what they should be, right? And let them do their job in managing medicine or what have you. And then I'll ask my clients for permission to do some wraparound care with that provider if I sense that that's what we need to do, so that the medical provider who is prescribing the medicine, the OB that's working with the mom, and then myself as a mental health clinician, we're all on the same page to make sure that mom and dad even are getting what they need. Yeah.
You said same page, and it leads me into my next thought and question on the same page. And how can relationship strain after birth of a baby impact the mental health of both parents?
So, like, if the couple is yeah. Yep. So that's the thing. I think the again, some of this is very nuanced, and it's not a cookie cutter answer. But if there's already whether prior to pregnancy, during pregnancy, or post-pregnancy, there's been some strains in a relationship that will impact how we feel, right? So you'll have some couples that feel like the baby is going to be the thing to heal those relational strains. For some couples, they feel that the baby is the cause of the relational strain, right? Or it's compounded, right? It's things that now we're adjusting to with having a child or expanding our family to on top of the things that we just haven't been able to get through. And all of that impacts you mentally, emotionally, what have you. So as a clinician, my job is to get to the root, and I'm a systemically trained therapist. So I'm looking at the entire family system, not just the problem, right? And I want to get to the root of what that problem is, and how does that problem try to permeate this system, and how are your behaviors towards that problem impacting not only the couple and their relationship, but how will it impact baby? How will it impact the child or other children or other parts of the family system? But it is definitely a common thing. Whether there was prior relational strain or some new relational strain. I think about a couple who maybe is doing well in their relationship, right? Baby comes along, but there is maybe some postpartum anxiety and this fear that something's going to happen to this baby. So if you don't change the diaper the way that I changed the diaper, it's going to be a problem. If you don't feed the baby the exact way that I feed the baby, it's a problem. If you hold the baby, which most men hold babies like they're carrying a football, right? And while to some degree there's a normal anxiety that comes over the mother, like, wait a minute, like cradle, like hold, right? But sometimes when it impairs functioning, right, it becomes a problem. So then the dad feels defeated and feels like, well, I can't do anything. Now there's an interruption with dad being able to bond with baby. Now baby is even more attached to just mom. And now there's relational strife in the couple because of hypervigilance from anxiety. So it can look in many different ways. It just depends on who I'm working with.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to just take a step back and look at a term, because we've talked about this when we talked on the phone previous conversation. You know, I just had my third child, and this was the first time I've heard of this term, and so I'm not even going to be able to say it because I'm like, wait, what is this word? Hey, could you tell me what is this word? Because it's paternal prenatal depression. Is that
Post-perinatal?
Post-perinatal.
Yeah,
so that is for
paternal
the fathers.
Perinatal depression or post-perinatal depression. Yes.
And so that's for the dads, and it's something that dads may experience. But what does that look like? What are those signs?
Yeah. So some of the classic signs with that is high irritability. Right. There's that a little bit of withdrawing. And a lot of that is because of not knowing what to do with these emotions. And to your point, we don't talk about it enough. And the whole entire time of pregnancy, every doctor's visit, every step along the journey, and even into the delivery room focuses on mom and baby, right? And don't let it be a pregnancy or a delivery that was traumatic in nature, where dad has to step outside the room and hold himself together to be strong for mom and baby. Don't let the baby have to end up in the NICU and nobody can touch the baby. And dad is trying to hold all this together. And so that's a lot of emotions. What do I do with this? I don't have a name for it, right? And so what some men typically would do, it can come out in high irritability. It can come out in being in withdrawing, kind of isolating in a sense, overworking, because I got to do something with this energy. I'm going to do what I know to do. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to be the best provider I can, right? And so those are like some of the classic signs. I wrote another note here on that one. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. Oh yeah, of course, shutdown, emotional complete shutdown. And in some very, I would say, severe cases, maybe even substance abuse, right? But again, who's checking on the dad? Because he's hurting just as much.
I just have to say that is such a good point, particularly in a high-risk pregnancy.
Yeah.
And you're so right. The focus is on the mom and the baby.
Yeah.
That dad is hurting. That was his child,
That was
too.
his child, too.
And it often, in the medical field, comes out at the physician or something as anger. And
Yeah.
I have to tell people, that's not directed at you.
That's not directed at you. That anger is what we would call displaced anger, right? That anger is also very layered. There's grief. Mm-hmm. If there's something traumatic that has happened, or it doesn't even have to be traumatic. We didn't expect the pregnancy to go this way. We didn't expect the delivery to go this way. So a loss of expectation can bring on grief and sadness, but it may show up as anger, right? But let's just say it's not a high-risk pregnancy. It's what one would consider a normal pregnancy. But I'm still experiencing all these feelings. My wife is changing. She's different. Our life is different. I'm now thinking about things I never had to think about before. This is starting to feel overwhelming. And nobody's checking in on me. No one's calling to see how I'm doing. Now, I am so glad to hear about so many companies that are starting to give adequate paternity leave because it's important. I've heard someone having at most 6 weeks of paternity leave, which is amazing because dads need to bond with the baby. And the whole family system has changed. And so we got to figure out how we're going to operate now. There's a new normal that we have to develop. But oftentimes, even when with loved ones, folks are calling in. How's she doing? How's baby? No one's checking on the dad. Where does his emotions go? Where does he get to process? And if he processes with other men, what are they going to say? Well, you know, bro, that's just how it is. You know, this is what we got to do. You know, we got to man up. What does that even mean? when I'm feeling these things, whether I'm hurting, right, or I'm just exhausted. This baby cries every 2-3 hours. And I gotta somehow be at work and function at work, and then I come home and she's exhausted, and so she's been with baby and she's upset because I haven't been there, but I've been working and I'm tired too. Everybody's tired, but nobody's asking me how I'm really doing. And so perinatal depression tends to kick in for men, and that's what it looks like. It looks like a lot of shutting down, a lot of withdrawing, a lot of high irritability, overworking, and in the worst cases, substance use.
So as those things occur for both mother and father, what are some of those barriers that prevent them from seeking that help?
Yeah. So I think a couple things. One of the things that, and Dr. Dungy, that is your brother and your maiden name, Dr. Poitras. I think one huge factor is the healthcare disparities amongst African Americans and I would say brown people in general, right? So there's a mistrust of the healthcare system. And then when I think about infant mortality rates and I think about all of these things come into play. So when you have that alone, mental health, what happens in my house stays in my house. We don't need to talk about that, right? And so there's stigma around help especially in a clinical way, right? So we're still up against stigma around mental health, even as much as we have grown to embrace mental health services. There's still a lot of that there, and I would say even some shame for some people that I should be able to do this, right? So internalized shame, those internalized narratives that I spoke on earlier, that tends to influence whether or not I get help or not, right? Because I have expectations and narratives that says that I should be able to do this, right? And in some cases, just downplaying how severe it is, how much of a struggle that one is holding, because, we're told, oh, well, it'll get better. This will pass. You won't always be in this season. You won't. And
it's a long night,
right? But so it's some of those things. But I think a lot of the huge barriers are systemic in nature. And that's the other thing. Speaking of systemic, access, resources, right? It costs. Can I afford that type of help? Especially from a professional. So all of those things. Yeah.
Are there any support services that may not cost? I mean, churches or how would you recommend if I'm a dad? Sorry, if I'm a dad, I need some help. I'm just not feeling right. What might be a way I might start that conversation with somebody? Yeah,
I think one is starting a conversation with yourself, acknowledging that no, I am not okay. And it is okay that you're not okay. Yeah. It's acknowledging and not and pushing through that shame of like, no, I'm not well in this. So it may start for some, especially if we're talking about dads, it may start with like a trusted friend or someone who they deem as safe enough to share this with. But even beyond that, of course, therapy is a huge resource. And if the cost is a barrier, because I do understand that many therapists have moved towards a non-insurance model. There are some that still are paneled with insurance. So check with your insurance, check with your EAP and your, which is employee assistance programs, to see if they offer any kind of mental health support just through your job that will cover some sessions. Check with your insurance. If you end up with a therapist who doesn't accept insurance, ask the therapist, especially finances is a barrier, do you have a sliding scale? Do you do reduced rate? Because many private practice clinicians will hold a certain number of spots for reduced rate based off of whatever the conditions may be. But then church communities, faith communities, seeing what kind of resources that they have. I know here in Indianapolis, we have a great resource in the counseling center at Christian Theological Seminary. It is a training counseling center facility that has therapists, interns, and residents. They get adequate supervision, but they serve the greater Indianapolis area. And now with telehealth, these therapists can serve anyone in the state of Indiana, right? And so that's one of the most affordable places to get therapeutic help. But again, contacting your local churches and even colleges and universities that have mental health programs, what counseling centers would they recommend, what have you, where you can get maybe some subsidy in the care. There is an organization called Postpartum International. They have lots of resources. Just Google that, the website will come up, and there's tons of resources there, and that they can connect folks to for both postpartum and I believe perinatal depression as well. So the key is that you don't keep it in. Talk to someone. And resources are there, and there's abundant of resources out there to help.
Do you have any recommendations for couples who are maybe in that last trimester pregnancy, heading into going to have this baby? How do we sort of keep some of these?
This is my favorite thing to talk about is, so one of the things that I'm very passionate about when I'm working with couples who are pregnant is maintaining your status as a couple. These little jokers, as cute as they are, they're going to grow up and they are going to leave the house. And they're going to forge their own lives and their path in life. And if you two do not, especially if you're married, if you two do not nurture your marriage, even while your child rearing and bearing, right? If you don't nurture that marriage, what happens is you'll create a gap between you two. The kids become the center of everything, which can easily happen, right? Where they're now the center, everything about you two revolves around them and what they're doing, and now there's a gap. They grow up, they leave, and here you are like this. You don't know each other anymore. You have lost all connection, right? And this is how so many people who have been married 30, 40 years end up in divorce. It's just a theory that I have. I don't have any stats to prove this. They lost the connection. Life became about the kids. The marriage became very transactional. It became almost like a business in a sense. And they lost their way, right? And it's so easy to do that, especially as you get into that third trimester. We're starting to nest and you're making all the preparations, right? The doctor's appointments are increasing. You're trying to make sure the nursery is all together. You're trying to prepare for bringing baby home. And there's so much pressure and exhaustion even in that part, right? That if you lose sight on the fact that it was just in some cases, the two of us together, right? Or maybe you are blended family, but you still were able to maintain that connection. That is crucial. So some of the things that I try to get my couples to do is get creative with what you got, right? Every week can't be a date night, and I'm talking like when we go out and get dressed up, and we go to dinner, and we do the things, but it could be that, you know what? Every week we're going to carve out some time to just focus on us. Even if we pop on Netflix and create a little movie theater right here in our living room, or we go for a walk, or we go have coffee together, or what have you, that there's intentional time away from distractions, away from devices, where we just focus on each other. For those who have the ability to, the resources to, I encourage a little bit of a getaway just for them, where they can just focus on each other before baby comes, right? When baby comes home, you're literally in survival mode. Let's normalize that for a bit, because it's new, it's different, it's a lot of late nights and early mornings and feedings and all the things. But remember, you're a team. And you have to approach it with partnership and teamwork in mind. And being okay with the differences in how you do things, right? So the main thing is it done? Not, you didn't do it my way. Is it done? Is that one less thing we have to do, right? And even in that, how can we still maintain connection with one another?
Thank you for listening in today. Weren't you inspired, encouraged, and uplifted? We hope so, because we're praying the best for you. Join us again next time for more betterment, because the better you are, the better you are.